Okay, hello and welcome everyone to the last session presentation for this series. Today's session will be about presenting and attending at conferences. So for today's agenda, I'll start off by defining what a conference is, then what you can expect to see or do at a conference, then information on the presentation process for conferences and submitting a proposal, then tips on what to do when you're attending a conference, information on funding, and then a Q&A. And then after the Q&A, you'll complete a survey for the session series, and you need to complete the survey if you want your certificate for participating in the series. So if you want that certificate, don't leave after I finish answering questions. So don't leave the Zoom session. Okay, so what are conferences? Conferences are formal meetings for people with shared interests that usually last for a few days. Some conferences last for one day, but those are usually conferences that are very small, and they're usually local conferences in like a small town, for example. Larger conferences will last for at least a few days, so maybe 3 days or 4 days, sometimes even a full week. And some things you can expect to see or do at a conference are mostly presentations and sessions. That makes up the majority of any conference, whether it's a big conference or a small conference. There are also networking events, exhibitions. There can be new attendee sessions. So these are orientations and sessions specifically for people whose it's their first time attending the conference and they haven't been to the conference at any point in the past. And you also usually get free merchandise from either the conference or from an exhibition booth um, that's applied to promote their product or promote their services at the conference. And so what you'll see or be able to do depends on how big or small the conference is. At smaller conferences, you might only be able to attend presentations, but they might compensate for that by giving all attendees free breakfast or free lunch, especially if the conference is just a one-day event. At larger conferences, you might not get free meals, or you might get a free meal at the end of the conference, but you'll have a lot more events and sessions that you can attend. And you'll have sessions for like first time attendees. There might be things like book signings, there might be pre-conference events, and those are events or sessions that happen before the official start date of the conference. There can even be things like sessions where you do art. So for example, the last session that I attended was a very large session, and they had a networking session where everyone who showed up would just knit and talk together. Okay, so the process for presenting at a conference starts with a call for papers or presenters from the hosting organization or institution, and then anyone that's interested in presenting will follow the submission instructions to submit their abstract or their presentation outline. Then decisions will be made by the host organization or institution on who will be accepted to present and who will be rejected. And if you are accepted, you'll receive like an email and more detailed information about things like registration and preparing for the conference, what hotels can you stay at, more information about the conference venue, what you might need to set up, or what the conference is providing to presenters to help them set up. So things that, for example, if they're providing any like electronic equipment so that presenters can present using like Google Slides, so stuff like that. And if you're rejected, then you can still go to the conference. You'll just go as an attendee instead of a presenter. And if you are accepted, then after being accepted, you'll design your actual presentation and then coordinate your travel and attendance cost, and then you attend the conference. So when you're submitting a proposal to present, you need to make sure that the conference theme or goal is appropriate for your research paper or presentation. So what that means is that you want to make sure that your paper or your conference topic, your presentation topic is aligned with the conference theme or the goal of the conference. And the closer that it's aligned, the more likely your proposal will be accepted for the conference presentation. Most organizers will not accept late submissions, so you need to pay attention to the deadlines for calls or for papers or for presenters, especially if you're presenting at an international conference. So like a conference that's either online, for example, a conference that's being hosted in the UK, but you're presenting from Kazakhstan and it's an online conference, so you don't have to actually travel to the UK. You want to pay attention to the time zone difference because it's conference or conference organizations and institutions will have the deadlines in their time zone. And if you miss the deadline because of the time zone difference, the organization or institution will not accept late submissions, and you'll basically miss out on your chance to present at the conference. So that's something you really want to pay attention to. And then when you're submitting proposals, you should make sure to follow all of the instructions and be as detailed and thorough when you're answering questions in a proposal, because failure to follow instructions can get your proposal thrown out. And so that could also jeopardize your chances of being accepted to present at the conference. And if you're submitting a proposal, you should have already started your research. Usually conference proposals are submitted several months before the actual conference takes place. So for example, an organization or institution might call for proposals in September, but the actual conference date is in March. So in September, you can submit your proposal and you should have already started your research, but you don't have to actually be done with your research. But by the time the conference actually starts, you should have the majority of your research done, if not all of your research. You should at least have enough to be able to talk about the findings of your research. And I should mention this, but for undergrads, usually the process is a lot easier. There's a lot of presentation opportunities specifically for undergrads, and a lot of those opportunities are at the universities themselves. So it's a lot more easygoing. It's a lot more low stakes than presenting either at the graduate level or postgraduate level. So if you're a PhD student, and usually if you're presenting research as an undergrad, you're basically just designing a poster presentation for the most part. There might be cases where you might design like a Google slide presentation, but usually when undergrad students present research, it's in the form of a poster. Okay, so there are many conferences that will let you see the conference schedule before the actual conference starts. So for example, maybe like a month before the conference starts, you'll get an email with more information on who's presenting, what topics are being presented on at the conference, what sessions are being held at the conference. Are they having first-time attendee sessions? Are they having network sessions? Are they having like social gatherings and stuff like that? And so you can use that to plan ahead and decide what sessions or presentations or networking events you want to attend at the conference beforehand. You should also make sure to get to the conference venue early so that you can avoid long registration lines, especially for the large conferences, and you have time to tour the venue, especially if the venue is very large or if there's a lot of space and the presentation sessions are being held in different parts of the venue. And then you want to make sure you get there early so you can get any free merchandise that's being offered at the conference. You should always consider taking notes during the sessions of anything interesting or anything that's applicable to your field or area of research, or something or a question that you might want to ask the presenter or talk to the presenter about once they're done presenting or during their presentation if it's a poster presentation. You should always participate in session activities since it's a good way to share and gain ideas, both sharing ideas with other people and then gaining ideas and new perspectives from other people, especially if you're attending presentation sessions that have early career like researchers or people that are new to the field and people that are also experienced in the field. So they've been in the field for maybe like 10 or 20 years. It's also a very easy way to introduce yourself and to meet new people that are working in your field of interest. If there is a presentation you especially like, it's very common to talk to the presenter after their session or to get their contact information and then follow up with them after the session. And that's another way where you can network with other people in the field, and you can also learn more about research that's being done in the field and about a topic that you're especially interested in. Like I mentioned earlier, many sessions also offer networking events and events for newcomers or first-time attendees. So you should consider going to those to meet new people in your field, especially because first-time attendees or newcomer events are designed specifically for people that have not been to either that specific conference or to a large conference before. And it's specifically designed to help those people meet new people at the conference, extend their professional network, especially if you're a student or if you're like early career researcher or you're in the early stage of your career in whatever field you're interested in, because you're less likely to have the professional connections that someone that's been in the field for 10 or 20 years might have. And then if you're attending with other people, then you might also want to consider going to different sessions. And this is a good strategy to use, especially at large conferences where there's multiple conferences or multiple presentations and multiple sessions or workshops even that are happening at the same time. So there's a session you want to go to, or there's two sessions you want to go to, but they're happening at the same time. If you're attending with other people, maybe you met those people at the conference at a session or like a networking event. Maybe they're friends that you came to the conference with. What you can do is have one person go to one session, one person go to the other, and then a person go to a different session. And then you gather up after the sessions are over. And then you share like notes, you share interesting points, you share any interesting questions and responses that happened during the session so that you're still getting some information from the other sessions that you weren't able to attend yourself because they were happening at the same time. Okay, so many universities offer funding for in-person conferences, especially. And this is more so the case if you're a presenter, but many universities will still offer funding for attendees as well. Some might not, some do. It depends on the university. So you have to inquire once you're enrolled at a specific college, or even like go to their website and see if that information is already published somewhere on the university's website. Additionally, the organization or institution hosting the conference might also offer funding for attendees or discounts on registration, specifically for presenters. So that's another way you can reduce the cost of attending a conference. There's also a chance that there are conference sponsors or other organizations that are in your field of study that might also offer funding for attending conferences as well, especially if you're attending a very large, a very well-known conference in your field of study. And in a lot of cases, funding is offered first come, first serve, which means that the funding goes to eligible applicants that apply the earliest, and then they go through the list of applicants until there's no funding left. So if you're sure that you're attending a conference and then you definitely want to see if there's funding opportunities available from the organization or institution hosting the conference, and then apply as soon as possible. Some conferences also let attendees volunteer to reduce the cost of attending a conference as well. So that's another option you can do to reduce costs. Okay, so here's our contact information. If you have any questions after the session, you can contact my supervisor, Donna Nakaiba, through WhatsApp at +7 701 266 9680, or through email at dnakaiba@educationusa.org. You can contact me through WhatsApp at +7 705 985 7408, or through email at qtownsend@middlebury.edu. And then you can scan the QR code for the extra materials for the session, which are basically presentation opportunities, and then some extra information on tips for attending conferences, and then tips for actually presenting your research at a conference. So what should you do when you present? Like, how do you effectively present your research at a conference? Okay, so that is all for this presentation. Thank you for coming and for listening, and then I'll be taking questions starting now.